what's been going on and why you felt compelled to speak at this point.
Yeah, so I mean, I plan on going to the board meeting tomorrow to show support. I'm a Harvard parent, and I'm a former principal here in this community. I was at Love Elementary last year. I chose to voluntarily leave the district in March, and unfortunately I was facing a lot of the same issues and pressures that Dr. Calabrese had been facing here at Harvard. So I definitely wanted to speak, and one of the big things that really motivated me was just the lack of professionalism that Central Division has shown, which is what Harvard is in and Love was in as well as part of HISD, under the leadership of Luz Martinez. And I felt that's what I wanted to speak to on the board, but I also didn't want to just be limited to just a minute, because there's a lot to be unpacked. I think there's a lot that's coming out now that shows the inconsistency on how things are being implemented at the district level down to their divisions. And Luz Martinez in the Central Division do things very differently than former colleagues of mine experienced in the West or the East or the South. And it's unfortunate because it's driving good leaders out. And in Dr. Calabrese's case, it's creating retaliation for advocating for your community, which I firmly believe is behind. I don't, obviously they don't say why, but I believe that strongly that her advocation for IB programming here being in conflict with NES is a big reason for her being pressured out.
Calabrese.
Calabrese, yes. It happened to me when I was at Love. I was a big advocate for our dual language program, and that had a lot of conflicts with NES. And I think that those conflicts, I've learned that Central Division doesn't like it when people speak out. They want you in line, and they wanted us in line. And I can imagine, because I'm a former colleague and a good friend of Dr. Calabrese, I know the type of pressures that she had been experiencing, because I myself experienced them, and I chose to step away before it got to the point that it did with Dr. Calabrese and Dr. Pettis, who was the assistant principal here.
You said you sort of saw the writing on the wall, right?
Yeah.
And what was that writing?
Well, for me, when I was very adamant that a lot of the practices were in conflict with our programming, our unique programming for our school, I was told a lot of different phrases, such as my decision to not opt in for NES was regrettable for my community, for my school, regrettable for me professionally, and that was the writing on the wall, right? You can read between the lines and see that, that maybe this is not going to be the best interest for me career-wise. Nonetheless, I chose to always advocate for my community and my students and my staff and their opinions. It was very clear, continuing, that they were not happy with that decision, with comments like that. They said that my decision was not a good one for a lot of my economically disadvantaged students and students of color. They said things like that because they felt that NES was better for them. And I made the counter argument that the program and the reason the
we're not saying what district or what school you're at.
Yeah.
You are still an educator, right?
I'm still an educator. I'm a school administrator at a district here in the Houston area. I was with HISD. I became a principal at the same time as Dr. Calabrese, and we were for the first full year as first-year principals together. I then, the second year is when the takeover occurred, and it was in March of this most recent year that I decided to step away shortly before spring break and take a position elsewhere.
What do you make of everything that's happening here at Harvard? You had a principal announced last week.
Mm-hmm.
She apparently steps away now because of bullying. As a former educator here in this area, what do you make of all this? I
don't buy the bullying at all, and that was a phrase that was used by the release from the messaging from Dr. Martinez when she announced that that she was not going to be accepting the position after all. Emails came out, and it showed, unfortunately, a lot of the motivations to very quickly move up the ladder, and I've seen that with a lot of the people that are in that academy type position. And I think that the Harvard community rightfully questioned motives. We are questioning the motives of everyone involved. Is it really in the best interest of our kids? And I think that the decision was probably a good one in terms of for the community. I think the community is very happy with, we're already happy with the administration that was here. The new assistant principal coming over, we've heard great things. I also know the new principal coming in that is now taking the position, who they're going to be meeting tonight in tonight's meeting. I think is very highly qualified. And that was also a question of qualification. You didn't receive your principal certification until May, middle of this takeover. Talking about Benito, yeah. So that's a lot of the big, questions is like, it came across someone climbing the ladder? And that doesn't line up with anything that we said that we need here in terms of supporting the IB program, supporting growth and getting Harvard to maintain being an A school again and all this stuff. It didn't match up.
As a parent, we'll go from you being a former educator in this area to a parent.
Yeah.
There's no sustainability. Talk to us about the lack of, I guess, sustainability and what that does to not have sort of a set structure and people in place, what that does for the children and the teachers.
Turnover, and I can say this as a parent because my own child in this case deeply was affected and really was like, where is Dr. Calabrese? It creates confusion, especially when you're talking about the middle of a semester, no natural break, not at semester even, not at the end of a year. It creates turmoil, creates frustration and stress on the students. We see it as parents on our kids' teachers and the stress that puts them under, constant changes of leadership and direction, and that affects their teaching and that affects the learning of our kids. So it's not sustainable. And all the change and constant turmoil that's going on at all of our schools, including here at Harvard, it's not sustainable because we're seeing good, highly qualified educators, teachers, administrators choosing to leave on their own accord, or unfortunately, like in the case of Dr. Calabrese, being pushed out.
Okay. Where do you guys go from here?
I think we continue to advocate as a parent community as we have. We make sure that our voice is still being heard. We go through all the proper channels. We're going to see a lot of Harvard parents in the community at the board meeting tomorrow, and they'll continue to see that. We want to make sure that they understand that we know what's best for our kids. We're going to continue to advocate for our kids. And we've been waiting. We're ready and willing to work with the district leadership and administration together. I know the PTA has advocated that, but we're not seeing that bear out in practice. We're not seeing them actually back up with actually working with us. Instead, it's being told this is what's happening.
Do you think this is a Mike Miles thing or more of a Dr. Martinez thing?
I think in this particular case, in my personal opinion, I think it's a Dr. Martinez thing. I think there's a lot of things we obviously fundamentally disagree with Superintendent Miles and his administration since the takeover. But I do believe that, as I mentioned before, I think that there is a lack of clarity on how the initiatives and directives from up top from Superintendent Miles are being implemented at the individual divisions. And Central Division, and Dr. Martinez in particular, have taken a lot of liberties, in my opinion, and how those expectations from up top. And I would really encourage, one of my big pushes for the board and for everyone involved is to actually audit and check on what's going on. Is everything that the takeover is about and the NES model and the expectations of the district administration, is it truly being uniformly implemented across the board in a fair way at all four divisions? Or do we have four separate school districts here with four separate superintendents?
Right, okay. How long were you here before you left when the takeover happened?
So I was a principal in this district. I was in my second year as a principal. Prior to that, I was an assistant principal for 5 years, and I was a teacher for 3 years in HISD prior to leaving.
And then you were with the district, with your school, when the takeover happened.
Yes.
How long did you last before you left?
So takeover happened that summer, officially in June at the end of that school year. I went the following March. So a semester and then half of another semester.
That quick, and then you were gone.
Unfortunately, I wasn't the first one, and I wasn't the last. There was a wave of principals that early on that summer decided to leave. And I left in the middle of the semester. Also, as you guys saw, there was a huge wave in May that principals that were asked to resign, and some really highly qualified ones, including colleagues of mine that were former principals of the year in elementary, the principal of the year of the middle school level, asked to resign. Because again, it's not about, from my experience as a principal in this district, it's not about getting the results. It's about doing it in the way that Dr. Martinez or Superintendent Miles wants them done. One example I'll give you is a strong one is they always talk about ratings. We did our way at Love Elementary when I was principal. I had an amazing faculty and staff that was dedicated, that had a targeted plan. We knew that we had fallen to a D, and we had a game plan to fix it. And we implemented that game plan up until through even beyond me leaving. When the scores came out this past summer, Love went from a D to a B, back to a B. All right, and that has nothing to do with NES or anything to do with that. That has to do with the hard work of the students and staff at Love Elementary, who did it in a very informed manner, and we knew our community best, so we knew how to improve it. So it's very frustrating when, although Harvard moved from an A to a B, I know that they have such a highly qualified staff, and we have full faith in the teachers, and we had full faith in the existing administration, that they had a game plan to get Harvard back to an A-rated school. So if it's all about ratings, well, what it's really about, it's all about trust. And it's clear that Dr. Martinez and to the same extent, Superintendent trust and we don't have the autonomy that we were told we would have based on our performance.
You've moved on. You're with another district in the Houston area. Talk to us about the differences there.
Day and night, I talk to other colleagues of mine who have also left the district and work in other area districts. So I kind of have a good feeling of sampling for other districts in the area. Night and day difference in terms of organization, not this chaos, no turmoil, listening to the constituents, all the stakeholders, the parents, the students, the leaders on the ground at the schools before making whole systematic changes. Just a level of trust and transparency that we used to have. I'm not saying Houston ISD was perfect. There was a reason for the takeover, but there was a level of just respect and decency and transparency in our communication that no longer exists, unfortunately, in my opinion.
What do you think about Dr. Martinez, and kind of touched on how you feel she's running things?
Yeah.
Does there need to be a conversation about her leadership with Mike Miles, or what needs to happen there?
I think the biggest thing for Superintendent Miles, right, is about accountability. We need to be accountable for the results at our schools, and I think the same is true of district leadership and management, and in this case, Dr. Martinez. I think there should be a full review of the performance, and I think just as we would judge a school leader for turnover in teachers or students leaving schools, there should be equally judgment over higher level district leadership if you're losing good leaders and having turmoil at your schools and having performance. The accountability goes from the top to the bottom and reverse. And so I think there should be a very comprehensive review, as I said before, about practices and how they're being implemented at all four of the divisions here in HISD to ensure fairness and to ensure that it's actually working the way it's intended to at all these different divisions.
We haven't had really too many people, principals, speak out, even if they're former principals.
Yeah.
Your situation is a little bit different. You're a former principal in this area for HISD, but you're also a parent here at Harvard,
Yes.
right? Talk to us about how that sort of sparked you wanting to get the word out.
It's very nerve-wracking. The intimidation is real. I did speak out initially a little bit when I first left. I know some of my other colleagues have started to speak out. I know some that are very quiet, and I truly respect that because it's intimidating. The practices we experienced, it still feels like we can be affected even in our new positions in other places. It feels that it's a real fear, and it was a culture of fear that was here. Me speaking now, this is motivated by me as a parent. This is affecting my own kid. If I was willing my own, because I'm their principal in that sense and know my school, I'm sure, as you can believe, I'm going to speak for my child. And I'm concerned about the quality of education she's getting, and I'm concerned about, like every other parent, the turmoil and change being created in the environment.
The new folks that are coming in, you mentioned you are aware of who they are.
Yes.
You feel they are qualified.
Yes.
It's just the ever revolving door, right?
Yeah, because the feeling is we did have qualified people. So the change is not merited. Again, I know that they cannot go into reasons for terminations and stuff like that, but that's one thing with Dr. Calabrese. You also uprooted the assistant principal, who is well respected and qualified and liked, and the magnet coordinator, and you transferred them somewhere overnight. I will say this: another complaint that I've heard very loudly from the faculty and staff, our students, teachers here, is a lack of communication to them. No communication went out to the teachers with any of these moves before it went out to the parents and everybody else, and that fundamentally is just wrong. And our educators deserve better, and they should know and anticipate. Again, there still has been no official communication until literally yesterday, after there was complaints made about the faculty actually hearing about the changes of their own leadership. And that's concerning to me because that creates more fear and apprehension.
You're not buying the bullying?
Not buying it. I'm not buying the bullying at all. Your emails, our emails as public educators are subject for public information. And it was very clear from those emails that came out that she had desired a principalship and leadership. That's fine to have that desire, but to do it in the way in which someone climbed so quickly and wanted that position, it was not a good look. And I know as a principal and as an administrator, you have to be able to, it's much like politics, you have to be able to put everything out there, and for better or worse. If that was something that was not comfortable for her, I understand that, and you have your right not to do that, but it's definitely not bullying. I think it's a deflection tactic by Central Division to try and change the narrative over something that was a rushed and not a wise choice, not an informed choice. Definitely didn't have the Harvard community's input in it, that's for sure.
Now that you've been able to step back, when you look at the takeover overall, your thoughts, is there any good parts to it? Is it just mess? I mean,
There's no doubt with the takeover that there needed to be some major for teacher in this district and administrator. But the manner in which it's doing is driving away the wrong people. It's driving away the people that have a true passion and a true talent. The number of people that have left and other districts have welcomed with open arms because they know how highly qualified they are. It's disturbing, and it's a talent suck that's coming out of this district that I don't know if it's going to be repaired for a long time. I think long after Mike Miles is gone, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I feel like it's going to take a lot of time to repair that. Lasting effects. You saw that. I think they want to, you talk about narrative changes. They said that the voting of the no of the bond was a response to adult issues, and I said no, it's trust issues. I think it was more of a referendum on the leadership and what has been occurring and the manner in which it's occurred than it is about. We all know that our schools need more support, we need more money, need to be repaired, need to be enhanced. Of course we want that for our kids. And it's just insulting to insinuate that we don't want what's best for our kids. The problem is that there's zero trust because there's been zero transparency and communication and consistency. So we don't trust, and the Houston voters spoke and did not trust this non-elected board and non-selected by a board superintendent with that kind of money.
Would you ever come back to HISD?
I absolutely love HISD. I'm a resident in HISD. My daughter's an HISD student. I absolutely would consider coming back to HISD. But under the current administration, both at the Central Division level and at the district level, I would not. And I think that until that's moved out of the way and there's consistent positive practices, I think I would. Unfortunately, I think the bridge, I can't say that for a lot of my colleagues. You've asked that same question.
Do you think that's overwhelmingly?
No. I think the overwhelming majority of my former colleagues, former principals, administrators, teachers, the bridge has been burned. And I think they're going to go on to other places and stay there.
And you feel that's a big loss for HISD?
Absolutely. It's a big loss for our kids. It's a big loss for the communities. You see every day the number of uncertified teachers. I mean, you're losing good, certified veteran teachers who are here for the right reasons. Don't be wrong. In a big district like this, there's definitely cleaning up to do. And maybe people that aren't as qualified or people that aren't as motivated or don't have the same fire and passion for what they're doing, and they need to be held accountable. But putting in people that are not fully qualified, literally not certified, that's not the answer either. That's not the answer.
Okay. So anything that I might have missed that you want to mention?
No, like I said, I think my biggest plea and what I would say at the board meeting tomorrow, and I think you'll hear from some people, is just a desire for accountability with Central Division, because the community has felt so wronged with the communication, lack of transparency, and the perceived, and I'm not saying it, from my experiences, real unprofessionalism by members of the division.
With the new interim principal and
Yeah.
the assistant principal, you feel like you guys are in good hands if you can keep them?
Yeah, I mean, I think from what we've heard and what we've seen, and based on their track records, we feel really confident. You know, of course, we were confident in the leadership that was here, but I think all things considered, I do think there's the feeling that I'm hearing from people and what we've seen so far and hear from our new administration here. I think there's a lot of confidence and optimism. I think that's part of the Harvard community. We want to be optimistic because we want what's best for our kids, and so we want to
be
believe.
optimistic. I would assume that a lot of y'all, well, you want to be optimistic and you have
Yeah.
confidence in these new folks that are coming in. I guess the issue there is, will the superintendent interfere, right?
Exactly. I would say cautiously optimistic would be the better term, because who knows when there will be another switcheroo and something happens. We saw that a lot. I'll also just say, last thing from experience is within Central Division. As a Central Division principal, I had, in my only year and a half of the takeover existence, well, actually no, not even a full year of takeover experiences, I had 2 different senior executive directors and 2 different executive directors. That means the very leadership that's supposed to be guiding these schools above principals, even that's not stable. And that is changing and shifting because those people either aren't maybe meeting their standards, or they get burnt out and leave for a number of reasons. I just find it I think that it's indicative of a organization when even the higher management, in this case in the school district, your executive directors and the EDs of support are constantly changing and evolving. It creates chaos for principals, which in turn creates chaos down the line.
Okay, sounds good.